O Emperor, in your name I offer my pain. Let my blood wash away the stain of my survival. Let my death be the apology my life could not articulate. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on a battlefield that has already been surrendered to madness. The air is thick with the copper tang of blood and the scorched ozone smell of laser fire. Around you, the warriors of the Imperium are clad in ceramite, walking tanks of faith and steel, protected by the finest armor the Adeptus Mechanicus can forge. But you are different. You stand amidst the shrapnel and the screaming fire, with nothing but rags clinging to your scarred skin. You are naked to the horrors of the galaxy. There is no power armor to hum reassuringly against your bones. There is no helmet to filter out the screams of the dying or the corrupted whispers of the warp. You feel the cold wind bite into the fresh, weeping wounds carved into your flesh, wounds that you put there yourself. In your hands, your muscles screaming under the strain, you hold a weapon that was never designed for an unarmored human to wield. The Eviscerator, a chainsword of such colossal proportion that it roars like a trapped beast, its teeth eager to chew through tank armor and flesh alike. You are a contradiction. You are a warrior of the Adepta Sororitas, the elite militant arm of the Ecclesiarchy, yet you have been stripped of everything that makes a Sororitatis powerful. You are not here to win. You are not here to conquer. You are here to die. But you must not just die, you must die well. This is the horrifying reality of the Sister Repentia. To the outside observer, they are berserkers, fanatics who have lost their minds. But the truth is far more tragic. They are souls who have been crushed by the weight of an impossible standard. Women who love the Emperor so fiercely that they believe their very existence is an insult to him, unless they can wash it away with their own blood. Today, we are going to decode the brutal existence of these fallen sisters. We will walk the path of the Repentia, from the moment of their shameful failure to the bloody ritual of their unmaking, and finally to the suicidal charge that is their only hope of salvation. We will ask the question that the Ecclesiarchy refuses to answer. Is this redemption, or is it merely a slow, agonizing execution designed to wring the last drop of utility from a broken tool? Prepare yourself. The path to forgiveness is paved with absolute agony. My armor was my temple, and I allowed it to be breached. My resolve was my shield, and I allowed it to crack. I am the flaw in the design. To understand the Repentia, you must first understand the crushing architecture of the Adepta Sororitas itself. You have to realize that for a battle sister, perfection is not a goal, it is a baseline requirement. From the moment they are taken into the Schola Progenium, these women are forged in a furnace of indoctrination that would shatter a normal human mind. They are taught that they are the physical vessels of the Emperor's will. Their armor is not just protection, it is a holy vestment. Their bolter is not just a gun, it is a reliquary. In this environment, failure is redefined. For a guardsman, surviving a battle where your squad was wiped out might be seen as luck or perhaps tactical prudence. For a space marine, a tactical withdrawal might be a strategic necessity. But for a sister of battle, survival can be a sin. Did you retreat when the line broke, saving your life but yielding ground consecrated to him? That is a failure of courage. Did you hesitate for a fraction of a second before pulling the trigger on a heretic, perhaps recognizing a face from your past? That is a failure of hate. The psychological pressure is absolute. The Ecclesiarchy demands a binary state of existence. You are either a flawless instrument of the Emperor or you are broken. There is no middle ground. There is no good enough. And this is where the horror begins. It is not always the grand heresies that doom a sister. It is the insidious whisper of her own conscience. A sister might fight bravely for weeks, slaughtering xenos by the hundreds, but if she survives a battle where her canoness fell, she may look in the mirror and see a coward. She may believe that her survival is proof that she did not give enough. This guilt is a poison. It festers in the silence of the chapel barracks. It is not an external judgment initially. It is an internal collapse. The sister begins to feel that her armor no longer fits, that the prayers taste like ash in her mouth. She believes she has become disconnected from the Emperor's light. This is the tragedy of the indoctrination. It weaponizes their own devotion against them. The very love they hold for the master of mankind becomes the whip that flays their minds. They become convinced that their continued existence in the ranks of the chapter is a pollution of the chapter's honor. And so the decision is made. It is rarely a command from above, at least not at first. It is a confession. The sister goes to her superior not to ask for forgiveness, but to demand punishment. She declares herself unworthy. She begs to be stripped of the honor she believes she has tarnished. She asks to become a Repentia, not because she wants to die, but because she believes she no longer deserves to live as herself. She chooses the path of pain because in the twisted logic of the 41st millennium, pain is the only currency that can buy back a soul.
Take my name, for I have soiled it. Take my face, for I cannot bear to look at it. Leave me only the hate. The transformation from a battle sister to a Sister Repentia is not merely a change of assignment. It is a ritualistic funeral for the living. It is the ritual of unmaking, a ceremony designed to strip away every layer of identity, status, and protection until only the raw, shivering core of the penitent remains. It takes place in the deepest, shadowed sanctums of the order, away from the inspiring hymns of the main cathedrals. The atmosphere is not one of celebration, but of somber, crushing finality. Imagine the scene. The sister stands before her peers, fully armored for the last time. Her canoness or a palatine stands in judgment. The sister confesses her sins, sins that to us might seem trivial or understandable, but here are treated as high treason against the soul. She recites her failures, her voice cracking not with fear of death, but with the shame of life. And then the stripping begins. It is violent in its symbolism. Her bolter, the extension of her wrath, is taken from her hands. Her power armor, the symbol of her status and her protection, is unlocked and removed piece by piece. As the ceramic plates hit the floor with heavy, dead thuds, the sister becomes smaller. Without the bulk of the armor, she looks human, vulnerable. This is the intent. The system wants her to feel the cold. But the physical stripping is only the beginning. Next comes the erasure of the self. Her hair, often a point of pride or a marker of her years of service, is shorn off roughly. In many orders, the head is shaved completely bald, exposing the scalp to the harsh air, removing any trace of femininity or individuality. She is becoming a blank slate. Then come the oaths. She swears away her name. She is no longer Sister Lucia or Sister Verity. She is a Repentia. She belongs to no squad, leads no warriors, and holds no rank. She is an outcast within her own family. Her former sisters, women she fought and bled beside for decades, will now look at her not with camaraderie, but with a mix of pity and disgust.
She has become a pariah, a living reminder of the rot that can set in. To look at her is to see the possibility of one's own failure. Finally, the scars are applied. This varies by order, but often the Repentia is marked physically to denote her fallen status. Chains might be tattooed onto her skin, or actual chains might be wrapped around her limbs, biting into the flesh. In some of the more fanatical orders, the oath of the penitent is carved directly into the skin of her torso or face with an electu needle or a ritual knife. She is marked as damned. When the ritual concludes, she is handed her new tools, a ragged robe that offers no warmth and no armor, and the weapon of her doom. She has ceased to be a soldier. She is now a pilgrim of death.
Her whip is the lightning that illuminates the dark path. I kiss the scars it leaves, for they are the map to my salvation. Once the ritual is complete, you are handed over to the care of a Repentia superior. In the Gothic hierarchy of the Adepta Sororitas, she is perhaps the most terrifying figure of all. She is often called the Mistress of Repentance, but do not mistake her role for that of a mere jailer. She is a shepherd, and you are the lost sheep. But in the 41st millennium, the shepherd does not use a crook to guide the flock. She uses a pair of neural whips. The relationship between a Repentia and her mistress is a complex, disturbing web of dominance, submission, and twisted love. To the uninitiated, it looks like slavery. The mistress drives her charges forward with lashes that scramble the nerves and ignite pain receptors with white-hot agony. But you, as a Repentia, you do not hate her for this. You crave it. In your broken mind, the silence of the Emperor is the worst torture. The sting of the whip is proof that you are still seen, that you are still being corrected. It is a tangible connection to the authority you feel you have failed. Life in the Repentia squad, often sequestered in the damp, candlelit dungeons of a preceptory or the cramped bilge decks of a sororitas cruiser, is a continuous cycle of prayer and corporal punishment. You are forbidden from speaking unless spoken to. You are forbidden from looking upon the holy artifacts of the order. You are often denied sleep, forced to meditate on your sins while kneeling on stone floors until your knees bleed. And watching over this misery is the mistress. She recites the catechisms of penance, her voice booming over the sound of weeping. She reminds you constantly of what you lost. She picks at the scab of your failure, never letting it heal, because a healed wound might let you forget. The horror here is psychological conditioning of the highest order. The mistress teaches you that your body is no longer your own. It is a currency of flesh to be spent. Every lash she delivers is interpreted not as abuse, but as tough love. She is preparing you. She knows that where you are going, pain will be the only constant. If she can make you immune to the fear of pain now, if she can make you embrace the agony of the whip, then perhaps, just perhaps, you will not falter when the tyrannid claws tear into you. She is breaking you down to build a weapon that has no fear of death, because life has become more painful than the grave. It screams in my hands, a beast of iron and promethium. It demands blood. If I do not feed it the enemy, it will feed on me. And now we must talk about the instrument of your demise, the Eviscerator. In the armories of the Imperium, there are weapons designed for precision, for range, for tactical flexibility. The Eviscerator is none of these. It is a crude, industrial horror, a chainsword scaled up to grotesque proportions. Normally,
A weapon of this size is mounted on the Terminator armor of the Adepta Sororitas, or wielded by the transhuman muscle of a space marine. It requires servo motors and powered exoskeletons to lift effectively. But you are an unaugmented human woman. You have no power armor to enhance your strength. You have no recoil dampeners. When you lift the Eviscerator, you feel the sheer crushing mass of it straining your tendons. It is nearly as tall as you are. When you thumb the activation rune, the weapon does not hum, it roars. The heavy-gauge motor coughs into life, and the teeth, each the size of a dagger, begin to churn with a violence that threatens to tear the weapon from your grip. The gyroscopic forces alone are enough to snap a wrist if you are not careful. Holding an active Eviscerator is like wrestling a living creature. It vibrates through your entire skeleton, rattling your teeth, blurring your vision. Every swing is a commitment. Once you start the arc of a swing with an Eviscerator, you cannot stop it. The momentum is absolute. If you miss your target, the weapon might swing around and sever your own leg, or the torque might dislocate your shoulder. You have to fight the weapon just as hard as you fight the enemy. This is intentional. The Ecclesiarchy does not give you this weapon because it is efficient. They give it to you because it is a burden. It is a physical manifestation of your sin, heavy, unwieldy, and dangerous to the bearer. To wield it effectively requires a state of hysterical strength, a frantic, adrenaline-fueled mania that the Sororitas call the Emperor's Grace. You have to bypass the body's natural safety limits, tearing your own muscles to swing the blade, knowing that you might never recover from the exertion. It is a terror weapon. When a Repentia squad charges, the sound is deafening, a chorus of roaring engines and screaming fanatics. The Eviscerator is designed to tear through the thickest armor, ripping open tanks and bunkers. But it offers you zero defensive capability. You cannot parry with it effectively. It is too slow. You cannot block bullets with it. You can only attack. It forces you into a singular tactical mindset. Close the distance and kill them before they kill you. There is no retreat when you carry an Eviscerator, because you physically cannot run away while carrying it. You are anchored to your doom. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the darkest lore of the 41st Millennium, consider subscribing to Silent Imperium. We decode the nightmares that others only whisper about. Your support helps us keep the Astronomicon lit. Now, let us return to the battlefield.
I do not see the enemy. I see only targets for his wrath. I do not feel the wound. I feel only the urgency of the kill. Make me his instrument, one last time. The moment arrives. The drop pods slam into the dirt, or the ramp of the rhino carrier slams down into the mud. The air is instantly filled with the screech of xenos. Perhaps it is a tyrannid swarm, a carpet of chitin and claws stretching to the horizon. Perhaps it is an orc wa, a green tide of muscle and crude iron. It does not matter. To you, they are all the same, fuel for the pyre. You are not deployed in cover. You are not held in reserve. You are the tip of the spear, thrown recklessly into the thickest fighting. When the mistress cracks her whip and screams the command to charge, something snaps inside you. The fear that should paralyze an unarmored human simply evaporates, replaced by a cold, white-hot clarity. This is the zealot's trance. You run forward, your bare feet splashing through puddles of toxic sludge and blood.
The Eviscerator screams in your hands, its hunger matching your own. You are screaming too, a battle hymn that tears at your throat, joining the chorus of your doomed sisters. The first impact is wet and brutal. You slam into the enemy line with the force of a runaway train. The Eviscerator does its work. It doesn't just cut, it obliterates. You watch as a Tyrannid warrior, a creature that can rip a space marine in half, is turned into a spray of ichor and meat by the churning teeth of your weapon. You feel the hot spray of alien blood on your naked skin, baptizing you. In this moment, you are not a failure. You are a hurricane of violence. And then, the miracles begin. This is what the Ecclesiarchy calls acts of faith, but on the ground it looks like insanity defying physics. You see a sister to your left, struck squarely in the chest by a solid slug that should have blown her ribcage apart, but she does not fall. She stumbles, coughs blood, and simply keeps running, her hate holding her body together when biology says she should be dead. You see another sister walk through a storm of shuriken fire, the projectiles seeming to curve around her, deflected by the sheer force of her belief. It is the Emperor's grace made manifest, not a shield of energy, but a refusal to die until the duty is done. But the grace does not last forever. The reality of your lack of armor inevitably catches up. You feel a claw rake across your back, laying the muscle open to the bone. The pain is blinding, absolute, but you do not stop. You pivot, swinging the massive chainsword, and trade your life for the enemy's. You see your sisters falling around you, dismembered, dissolved by acid, crushed underfoot. But even as they die, they drag their killers down with them. It is a slaughterhouse, and you are both the butcher and the cattle.
They told me death would bring peace, but as the light fades, I realize I am just ammunition, spent and discarded. When the smoke clears, if you are somehow, miraculously still breathing, you are forced to confront the darkest truth of the Repentia, the lie of redemption. The Ecclesiarchy preaches that a Repentia who performs sufficient valor may be redeemed by the Emperor. There are legends, stories whispered in the scolums of Repentia who performed such deeds of heroism that they were welcomed back into the order, their sins washed away, their armor returned. They speak of the living saints who rose from the ranks of the damned. But let us look at the statistics. Let us look at the cold, hard reality of the 41st millennium. The survival rate of a Repentia squad is statistically 0. You are not meant to survive. The Eviscerator is not a weapon of a survivor. The lack of armor is not a test, it is a death sentence. The system is not designed to rehabilitate you. It is designed to liquidate you. You are a resource that has been deemed defective, and the Imperium, in its ruthless efficiency, has found a way to recycle you into a weapon of terror. If you survive one battle, you are simply patched up, crudely, often without painkillers, for pain is part of the penance, and thrown into the next, and the next, until you die. The redemption usually comes only in death. Absolution in death, they say. It is a convenient theology for an empire that needs bodies to clog the gears of the enemy war machine. Your guilt, your complex psychological trauma, your desperate need for approval, all of it is harvested. And what if you do the impossible? What if you slaughter a hive tyrant single-handedly? What if you save the entire flank? Rarely, very rarely, a Repentia might be offered a return to the sisterhood. But can she ever truly go back? Can she, who has walked naked through hell,
who has felt the spray of arterial blood on her skin for years, who has been whipped like a beast, ever truly fit back into the rigid, pristine hierarchy of the Battle Sisters? The answer is often no. Those few who survive often refuse the armor. They have become addicted to the purity of the naked blade. They become mistresses themselves, perpetuating the cycle of abuse. Or they simply choose to die in the next charge, unable to live without the adrenaline of the kill.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The Emperor protects, but he does not remember my name. The battle ends. The silence that falls over the field is heavier than the roar of the guns. The sky is choked with smoke, blotting out the stars. The ground is a tapestry of corpses. Among the fallen Astartes and the massed dead of the Imperial Guard, the bodies of the Repentia are hard to spot. They are small, fragile things, huddled in the mud, their rags soaked red. There will be no grand funeral for you. There will be no statue erected in the Hall of Heroes. Your name has already been stricken from the records. To the Imperium, you died the day you took the oath. What lies here in the mud is just biological refuse. The mistress, if she survived, will walk among the dead, retrieving the eviscerators. The weapons are valuable. They will be cleaned, blessed, and handed to the next weeping girl who thinks she has failed God. Your sacrifice bought the Imperium perhaps a few minutes of time, or a few meters of ground. In the grand scale of the galactic war, it is nothing. But to you, it was everything. You gave the only thing you had left, your suffering. And as the dark closes in, you can only hope that it was enough. You can only hope that the Emperor was watching. But in the grim darkness of the far future, the Emperor sits immobile on his golden throne, silent as the grave, while his daughters scream his name into the void. This is the horrifying reality of the Repentia. Not a glorious crusade, but a desperate, bloody suicide note written in the flesh of the faithful. This concludes our decoding of the Repentia. If this transmission has given you a new perspective on the cost of faith in the first 41st millennium, signify your loyalty. Like the video, subscribe to Silent Imperium, and ring the bell so you do not miss our next descent into the dark. Tell me in the comments, is the Repentia's sacrifice true bravery, or is it the ultimate tragedy of indoctrination? I will see you in the next file.